We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Progressive political theater is once again all the rage, from the streets of Washington, D.C. to the streets of New York. Whether it's reluctant representatives being marched off in handcuffs or not, or bodega workers having their rights destroyed. Nobody's better suited to talk about this than Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, Mr. Scott DiCosenza, who's also the host of the excellent Uprising podcast and a generally good guy. Happy birthday, Scott, and thanks for being here.
Well, cheers. Happy birthday to you, Mark Angelides.
So, Scott, tell me, we've seen the trials and tribulations of a bodega worker in New York who was attacked by a potential customer. And who the bodega worker?
He was the boyfriend of the parent of a potential customer. That was the relationship. Just
second cousin, twice removed of his brother's roommate.
Summoned, by the way, for the purpose of delivering a beating.
Yes,
so that's part of the details that seem to escape some reports.
It certainly does. Anyway, the long story short on that is that the bodega worker was initially charged with stabbing and murdering the assailant. Now, this came under the auspices of New York District Attorney Mr. Alvin Bragg, who has never met a criminal he didn't want to see on the sidewalks. Scott, your analysis.
Mark, it gets even worse than that. Jose Alba is the man's name, and they didn't just charge him. Mr. Bragg didn't just charge him with second-degree murder. He also wanted him to have to spend the entirety of his time between his arrest and what would be an eventual trial, or maybe in his mind a plea bargain, in Rikers Island, which is a horrible place to spend for any person, but especially for somebody who is maybe not elderly, but older. He's in his 60s. And also, he's not a criminal. He's not like a life of crime type person who is familiar with being incarcerated or these types of institutions. The man is a lawful immigrant and citizen of the United States. And he also, by the way, was stabbed 4 times by the dead man's girlfriend, the one who summoned the violence. And those wounds became infected at Rikers, even just during the short amount of time he was there. And it was only until the kind of public outrage that got his bond reduced to the point where he could actually leave the jail. So right from the jump, Mark, it seems like there's been some initiative to really grind down Mr. Alba for defending himself. Once again, he was at work, not wishing, he didn't go looking for trouble, right? He's trying to survive and live at work. And so I think this was just a political decision in the end, that, the decision to charge or not charge is ultimately a political decision. It's a politician who makes that decision. Mr. Bragg's an elected city politician. And so, I think the voices were just overwhelming, even probably from progressive people.
So just to be clear, the charges have now been dropped, and Mr. Alba is a free man, or does he still
not facing criminal charges at this time? These things can change, but yes, he.
Can I ask a question on this, Scott? So you said that Mr. Bragg had pushed for Mr. Alba to spend the time between his arrest and his trial in Rikers Island.
Yeah.
Is it a speedy process? I know that that's kind of a thing guaranteed by the Constitution, but how long does it actually take to get to trial where there's contested issues?
In this, they're still dealing with COVID backlogs and things like that, Mark. I can't even tell you without actually calling and checking with a New York trial attorney to get a real time on the ground answer. I don't know the answer to your question, but I can tell you that it is not what anyone would consider speedy while locked behind bars. By the way,
in Rikers Island,
you're going to get fired from your job, of course. Okay, you're going to get probably evicted from your apartment. They're going to repossess your car. I mean, you think of all the things that you have to do to maintain your life, and it's not even that it's like a difficulty. You're barred from doing so. It's not like you're going to be able to manage your affairs from inside the Rikers cells. So it
is not recommended, but
oh my,
it is not recommended to read out your credit card number over the phone to debt collectors whilst in Rikers Island. By the way, that is not recommended by anybody.
this is a man who fought to come to America and be an American, Mr. Alba, that is, to work in the bodega in Harlem. Like, why are you punishing this person, right? Who even if you think he did act inappropriately in the way he conducted himself in his self-defense, he stabbed the guy, by the way. That's what happened. There was a knife that they used, they said, for opening boxes or maybe just for self-defense purposes. But anyway, he grabbed this giant kitchen knife and he stabbed the man a few times to defend himself. But even if you think that that was somehow inappropriate or wrong, to think that you should grind him down with the process, that's another sort of part of the thing that I think has the ire of everybody who looks at criminal justice issues in cities across the country. You know, this is sort of representative, right, of what's going on in Philly, San Francisco, LA, Chicago. And it's like they don't pick on the really nefarious types to grind them down, okay, and punish them, random murderers and things like that. They seem to be able to get away with a wink and a nod
with murder.
Yeah, right. And meanwhile, a hardworking guy who's actually at the bodega in the middle of the night, so these people can get their crisps. That's for you and the English people, Mark. That's potato chips for the rest of us. You know, he's the one who's getting punished to the maximum extent of the law, or so was the wish of the attorney.
I think that's what really gets everybody, and why there was so much backlash against this. Because, I mean, even to just a casual observer with no real understanding of the intricacies of the law in the United States or in the specific laws for New York, it seemed like a clear-cut case of self-defense. There was an aggressor in his workplace. There was nowhere for Mr. Alba to run. What else was he going to do? I think that's it. Well, it really brings to heart the question of what is self-defense.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wanted to interrupt you because I don't think anybody's saying that it wasn't self-defense. Even Mr. Bragg, what they're saying is that it was impermissible legally to use deadly force to repel what may not have been deadly force. New York's self-defense statute, unlike, Mark, every other self-defense statute I've seen in the country, does not allow for deadly force unless deadly force is used. In other places, like where I am in Virginia right now, you can use deadly force to repel serious or grievous bodily harm or injury. So that's a wrinkle in New York's law that is not typical. It has to actually be deadly force to be met with deadly force. And
surely, Scott, and this is from a layman's point of view, surely you don't know that it's deadly force until you're dead, right?
Which is one of the reasons why in other states they don't have that part of the law, Mark.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank goodness for that.
So, Scott, the second story, I just want to briefly touch on it. Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar were both recently frog-marched away from the Supreme Court by police officers in handcuffs, allegedly in handcuffs, until such time as it was noticed that AOC herself was giving a solidarity fist to her supporters. What happened, Scott?
What happened was that they wanted to create the visual illusion that they were placed into custody and handcuffed in order to score political points. If you look at the way they're walking, there's no other possible interpretation. AOC does not walk around with her hands behind her back. We have the data on this. This is only something she's done now in order to effectuate the visual misrepresentation that she was placed into cuffs.
I know. I mean, the thing is, though, she had to keep that pose for approximately 45 seconds while the police officer escorted her away from blocking the road, right, which is what she was doing. She couldn't even manage the 45 seconds without giving the solidarity fist to her supporters.
She got a double hit. She got the one image with her hands behind her back, and then she got the power image with the fist raised. She's going to ride that. You know, sadly, the primary voters and most of the general election voters of her district are not going to hear this beautiful broadcast, Mark. So they're going to see some of those images when they get mailed to their houses, probably. And
the fist that launched 1,000 memes, no doubt.
Yeah.
So, Scott, one final question on that topic. Were they charged with anything?
According to the U.S. Capitol Police, Mark, they tweeted out that they made 34 arrests for crowding, obstructing, or incommodating. And that included 16 members of Congress. So yeah, they were, but it's, one of these tickets where you don't really, like, it's an arrest without a consequence.
Well, of course, if Alvin Bragg were in charge of Washington, D.C. prosecutions, I'm sure Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would be spending the next 2 years in Rikers Island. Scott D. Cosenza, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Mark.
And that's about it for this episode of Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'd like to thank our guests, Tim Donner, Jeff Charles, and Scott D. Cosenza. And as always, extend my thanks and appreciation to you, the listeners, for taking the time to join us. On next week's edition, among other fantastic guests, we'll be joined by Bill Walton of The Bill Walton Show, discussing Biden's legacy, the state of the economy, and the perilous road to freedom and energy independence. It's going to be quite the show. I'm Mark Angelides, and we'll see you there. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.